It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Phyllis Lader. Your maiden name was Wolf. We're here in...
My mother was a Bloch, which might mean something to you. I know that Bloch is a very Lithuanian name, because I think the yeshiva, the rabbi there was a Bloch. So there's a must be.
And a lot of the yeshivas.
And I know nothing.
So here you're going to tell us a little bit about your family history. You came in Hora 102. You don't look more than 82. It's incredible.
I don't feel more.
You look wonderful, Phyllis.
I don't feel.
And we're here in Israel and it's just
you can ask me whatever you want.
In your beautiful apartment here in Protea, and it's just so wonderful to be with you, and I so appreciate it.
Thank you very much for saying. You are good for me. You see, when you come like that, as some friends do, it's like medicine. Because my age is a bit lonely. All my family are gone. All my siblings have gone. I've got loads of children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews.
How many came in her? How many?
I've stopped counting.
But more than 100?
Yeah. Great. I've got only 23 grandchildren, but I've got over 100 great grandchildren.
It's amazing.
I've got 6 generations there. Wow. 5 generations.
So Phyllis, can I ask you were born in England?
I was born in Scotland, in Glasgow. My family came from Lithuania to Dundee. And Dundee is the most anti-Semitic town in the whole of the UK. They're the most anti-Jewish and pro-Palestinian.
Even today?
That they were born. My mother was born in Lithuania, but some of her siblings were born in Dundee. My grandfather's buried in Dundee.
Do you know why they left Lithuania to come to Dundee?
Why did they leave Russia, Lithuania? Pogroms.
The pogroms, yeah.
My father, I believe, was about 16 when he came over on his own and brought his brothers with him.
But why to Dundee? Why not to London or...
That you see, we didn't talk to our elders. It was a culture that was entirely different from today, where people speak.
Do you know which town your mother came from in Lithuania?
It wasn't Kovna, but it was near Kovna. Something Gaberna, which means a village or something.
In the district.
Yeah.
And your father, where did your father come from?
My father came from the same place, but they didn't know one another. He came to Dundee as well. That's what I can't understand.
They both came to Dundee?
Yeah, at different times. My mother came as a little girl. My father came as a teenager.
And did you ever ask your parents why they landed up...
We didn't do those sort of things. We didn't do that. We're tarnished.
Was there quite a large community in Dundee?
In Glasgow.
In Glasgow?
There was a community in Dundee. As I say, my grandfather's buried in Dundee. The grounds are there.
Today, is there still a community? Do you know?
That was a coast. That was the sea, from presumably Gdańsk, wherever they came from in Europe, over the sea, and I should imagine that was where the boats went to.
Oh, that's where they landed.
There was a community in Dundee, there was a very wealthy man there who helped the immigrants as they came in. That I know about because there's been a film about that. But that's as far as that's my father. My mother, I know nothing. And I don't talk about my uncle. My uncle was made a knight of by King George V. I remember King George V.
And you remember the Queen Queen Elizabeth when she was born?
When she was born. I made a little program about her.
So you grew up.
I grew up, but my
Do you
my
remember?
family came to Dundee. I don't know at what stage they had. My grandmother came, I know, with my mother already a child, a school child, and I don't know how many of her other children. She had six children. They moved from Dundee. Her husband died there. That I'm imagining, because his grave is there. They moved from Dundee to Greenock, which was an industrial town, and then the shipyards. And there was a lot, and a lot of these people went to South Africa. A lot of you South Africans came from those stoppings, from to Greenock, and then the bigger town to Glasgow. That's all I know, but that is all conjecture, because I've never spoken about it. And I'm only finding out now. A nephew has been to Clough and looked at the records, at old records, and he found that, there was a story then that men came over, left their wives behind, and didn't bother to go back again. And they left their wives in Lithuania, Poland, wherever the case may be.
Or they came over to finance to bring them over.
Ostensibly they came over to find a job and then go and fetch a wife. But a lot of them, didn't. But one of my uncles on my father's side married a woman in Kovna, or I don't know, Kovna, Riga, the two towns mixed up in my mind because I don't know
beyond
exactly.
there, maybe beyond there.
But and came to at that time Greenock, by Glen, not Dundee, Greenock, with his brother, because my father came first, although he was younger, and then he told his two brothers to come as well, which that one that was married went back and brought his wife. So I know that family, but I don't know history. They came with the name Etzikovich or something like that, and it became, and they all took on my father's name. There's a picture there of the older generation.
So this, if you can just show
old people, that's my mother.
This is your mother.
That's
if you can show the picture,
but
beautiful
there's a bigger,
picture. Oh, beautiful picture of your mother.
Oh, she was a bloch.
And your father was originally...
whatever. I can find out exactly. I've got the paper somewhere. But I want you to see that...
1 minute, we'll...
It's that big... the big one at the back.
Phyllis, and what year were you born? Oh, the date. Do you know the date?
Right, 29th, 1920. Tuba.
If I can show you these pictures, if you could...
That's my mother and father with the two oldest children.
Okay, if you could just show it's a beautiful picture, if you could... This is your mother...
My mother and father and oldest son and daughter.
How many children were there in the family?
We were 7 and I was a baby.
You were the youngest?
I was the youngest. I was born when my mother was 43. No, that's not that. That's only me. The very big picture.
Sure, they came from a very religious family.
That's right. That's my father and his two brothers that he brought over. His mother and father and sisters. That I know.
They were very, very religious. They came from
They were. His sister was religious, had 10 children. 5 of whom were caught in the Shoah and 5 were already in the States.
And the 5 that were caught in the Shoah, they didn't survive.
The ones that were caught, a grandmother, but this is new news.
And if I can just show you So,
A daughter of the fruit people. Grandmother was shot by Nazis in the street with a daughter and a baby. That I've learned from history. And I don't know anything much more.
and Phyllis, these two pictures.
That is my father. My father died, was killed in a motor accident when I was 6.
You were 6, so you still remember your father?
Yeah. I remember, funny thing is,
And this is your father with your mother?
I love this picture.
It's beautiful. Shame, that's so sad. So you grew up...
I grew up without a father.
Did your mother ever remarry?
No. They were one of these loving couples. That's all my siblings except before I was born.
This is before you were born, so if I can just show it, because these are incredible photographs. And where was these pictures were taken?
Say that again.
Where were the pictures taken? Is this already
This
in?
picture must have been taken in Glasgow by then.
And it was actually made into a postcard. So this is before you were born.
Yeah.
It was made into a postcard. Wow. Phyllis, this is touching history. This is amazing. And this picture.
That's my mother walking in the street in a town called Ayr, A-Y-R, where there was a Jewish hotel, which was very unusual still in the 1920s. And she's just walking in the street there. And there was always a photographer in the street, and they would click you and then come and ask you to buy them, and they'd meet you the next day and give you 3 copies.
It's so wonderful.
The other person, and the back it says movie snaps.
If I can just, these pictures are just, it's incredible that you have these pictures.
Oh, I've got loads more. Got hundreds of them. That's my mother.
She's a very courageous lady.
No idea when.
When your father passed away, what did your mother do to support the family?
She had a rich brother.
And this is your mother again?
She had grown up children who were working by then.
Oh, okay.
That's her again, yes. Very smart, always neat, always in the insides, and always a flower from Woolworths. A paper command, a fresh one every day.
A fresh flower every day. And can I ask you in this picture?
That is a change. I'm there. Your fingers on me.
Wow, so
I
here's...
was a bridesmaid.
Do you know roughly what year this was, or how old you were?
1920. I don't know what year exactly. It might say at the back. But on the front, you've got a bit of history.
Who was...
Turn it around.
The wedding of Isaac Rosen Levine in 1926.
Yes. They were relation. But you see all these ladies. That was the Jewish hotel. That was the front of the Jewish hotel in Ayr. That was taken in the entrance. There's a history there as well. There's a big history there.
And when you grew up, did you grow up in in a very religious home?
A traditional home. That's me.
This is so cute. And Phyllis, how old are you in this picture?
I was 4 years old, and my mother and father had gone back to Lithuania for his mother's 100th birthday. And I was put in charge of a family by the seaside. And that was taken then.
And do you remember, you recall?
I remember being there, and I remember the golf stick. I remember playing golf.
Phyllis, this is amazing.
I remember them coming back with a Russian doll. But my father was killed. They went. This passport fortress there, 1925, August 1925. He wasn't naturalized until then. He had to be naturalized because they wanted to go back to the continent to see his mother. So he became a citizen after being there for 30 odd years.
Only then?
He came on August 1925. He got his British passport. They went to Russia or to Lithuania in March 1926. And in May 1926 he was killed.
Was he killed in Lithuania?
No, he was killed in air.
Oh, when he came back?
Yeah. What did my mother do? She went on being a mother and a housewife. They had just moved into a house instead of an apartment. And that was, and then I was born in 1920.
Phyllis, can I ask, in this picture?
That is my husband and I. I think it was my first son's bar mitzvah.
So we're going to come on to this a bit later, but what a beautiful picture. Wow. And how many years ago?
How many years ago?
It's a beautiful picture.
My son would have been 78. No. So that's 13 from 78. How many years ago?
So Phyllis, can you tell us a little bit about growing up in...
Ask me questions, for instance.
Your mother, did she manage to still keep Shabbat or light the candles?
We were
Were you Shomer Shabbat?
I don't think we were religiously Shomer Shabbat, but we were Shomer Shabbat. The family all came Friday night for dinner. I went to shul every Shabbos. My father had actually been one of the founders of the shul, but it wasn't built when he was killed. So there was a big, the entrance of the shul had a big stone in his memory. One of a band of men, I remember the names of them as well.
And the school you went to, was it a public school or a Jewish school?
There was no such thing as a Jewish school in those days, darling. No such thing. I went to a private school, a good school. I think my uncle helped my mother. I think so, but that's only conjecture.
And were the other Jewish children?
Not at that time. 1920, no.
And did the other children know that you were Jewish, or did you ever
There were a number of Jewish people in the school. I had a problem with Reform Jews because always it happened, Yom Tov, I didn't go to school, they went to school. And there was always contention with me from the early age because I didn't go to shul on Yom Tov. So we were that much.
You didn't go to school on Yom Tov, yeah.
But we weren't learned or anything, it was traditional.
And with the non-Jewish children, did you make friends? Was it easy to make friends?
Yes, I had friends.
Did you?
I had Jewish friends from shul.
And did you ever experience any anti-Jewish feeling, anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish feeling?
Not at that stage, only later on, more into teens. Didn't experience when I was young. Into teenage, yes. But that was another thing. Newcastle, I got married to a man from Newcastle. And there I found anti-Semitism, rabid anti-Semitism.
And that's where Gateshead is?
In 1940.
That's where Gateshead, the Yeshiva Gateshead is in Newcastle. Okay, so let's just, because it's so intriguing, Phyllis, it's amazing. And you and your siblings,
yes,
you were all very close?
To this day, the children of my siblings, most of them, spend 3 or 4 days with me. They come to see me, to see Auntie Phyllis, because I'm the only one of the family. I'm the mature.
And when you were growing up, did you have any desire to go to London or to move?
Not
Or your family,
particularly.
you were happy where you were staying?
Not particularly. It was always the thought of Israel in the background, even in the 20s. My mother, I remember, was considering coming to Israel, and it fell through because in the meantime my father went and it didn't happen. And we never concentrated on it. We always had the DNF box. Israel was always there in the background, but not very strongly. It was always there. Whenever there was anything to do with it, people who could did. It's very difficult to talk about that in a small space, bring memories back. It needs, all of a sudden I'll remember something else. Ask me a question, it'll be better.
And in Glasgow, were you happy there? Were you happy in the...
I had, apart from the fact that I didn't have a father, and it came up sometimes in school or in conversation, I had a perfectly good life. My mother was a wonderful mother, a very active mother, Ladies Guild, butchered in those days, in the 20s, butchered clothing guild, because people were arriving, immigrants, like from out of the shore. No, well, it wasn't the shore then.
They were escaping from Europe.
From Europe, yes. Butchered clothing guild on a Wednesday, sewing for the poor on a Thursday, hospital visiting on a Monday. That was the kind of life my mother...
And do you remember the refugee children coming? Or?
I don't remember the refugees coming. I remember people coming to pick up a pair of shoes, but they went above us. In the Gaubles, you've heard of the Gaubles in Glasgow, worse than Stamford Hill. I mean, it was a terrible place. We went about to Buffers Heights without shoes. And they'd come on a Wednesday and collect us as a boatloads. I don't know how they did it. I don't know when they did it. I only know that those were the days my mother and her sister and other people all in the state. The people, not who were rich, but who could afford to do something.
And your teenage years,
Say that again.
Your teenage years, when you were a teenager.
Yes.
You were happy, you were...
Yes. I was fat and I was ugly, but I didn't care then.
Did you ever travel a little bit in the UK?
As a child, at 16, I went to France with the school. And there I went, there was another Jewish girl in the class, and the two of us kept Friday and Shabbos amongst a whole lot of girls. Remember that? We went to, I've forgotten the name of the town, the course. I'll think about it. You're bringing back memories I haven't thought of for years.
Wow, that must have been very exciting going.
Yeah. What can I tell you?
And London, did you go visit London?
London didn't feature until one of my younger sister, who was 11 years older than me. She was the youngest of the 6. Mm-hmm. She's on that picture. The picture of no. The youngest of the 6 was this one here.
In the middle.
And she had just met a boy from London.
What was her name?
Her name was Hilda, and she married a South African, German South African. His mother was German, very German. And they had come to London, and he was a traveller, and they met, and then
What was do you remember their name?
Jacobs.
Jacobs, wow. And then you went to London?
I went to London and visited, Lions Corner House. You don't know Lions Corner House? That's a story by itself.
Was it very impressive going to London? Was it a very...
It was a big deal. I wouldn't know. Money didn't register at all. Money didn't register. We were comfortable. We weren't rich. My mother had just moved into a house in just before I was born, and my father died in 26. So, what did you ask me now? What was that last question?
No, if growing up where you were with your, how was your neighbours? How did you get on with in the area?
Mostly non-Jewish neighbours, and I got on very well. Neighbours was a good thing.
And now,
I'm in touch with somebody in California who came to live next door to us, a minister's daughter, and we're both still alive.
and you're still in touch?
And we talk every
Wow. And Phyllis, with regard to when the war broke out, what are your memories about?
My memories, listening to the radio all the time, listening to everything, and my mother and many people, some of my siblings with the children, packed up bags and went to live in Ayr. I told you we're Ayr, which is a seaside town, and it became a big Jewish community there of people like us. My mother and I was, when I was 12, I was 10. No, I wasn't. I was 20. I was 18, 19, had been when the things were troubling. And people just packed up and went to Ayr and took houses, and we went to a hotel. My mother and I went to a hotel because I was the only one at home. And we went and we lived there, and we had a reasonable life. Met lots of American soldiers who were brought to the town for different reasons.
Was it dangerous living in you had to leave?
We were afraid, everybody was afraid of the planes coming over. And don't forget, we had shipyards in Glasgow, railroad, big factories, big garages for trains in Glasgow, so there was a fear. But there wasn't a great deal of activity. We blackened our windows, we had black curtains on our windows, we had rationing, we had coupons.
So did you spend most of the war years in Ayr?
I spent all the years, because I can't believe it, I was already 20 when war broke out, but I was married as well.
Okay, so were you married when the war broke out?
I got married, the war had broken. We met, but by the time we got married, the war broke out.
Where did you meet your husband?
In Ayr.
Wow, so going there was a good thing.
And my mother and I went to this Jewish hotel, and a lot of other people did as well. And that's where, and they lived there for the years of the war. Except my sister had a house, another sister had another sister got a job in a hotel or something. People did, hundreds and hundreds, from Glasgow, from Edinburgh, they came away from the cities to the coast. Ayr was on the seafront and had a golf course.
And your husband, where was his family from?
He was from Newcastle. But he also lived back.
Also lived back. Yeah. The roots were Litvischer.
Yeah. Oh yes, I mean I couldn't marry him.
And when he came?
Marry a Fuller. The others, the one with sugar in the gefilte fish.
How soon after you met did you decide to get married?
See again?
How soon after you met each other did you decide to get married?
You want a love story? There was a gentleman who had come down from Glasgow and brought his whole family down, a very wealthy man, and bought a beautiful bungalow, and he made raincoats, right, proper raincoat with material that was waterproof, right? And he brought this young man down to Ayr for Shabbat to meet his daughter, who was the same age as me. But he met me.
Wow. So we're just going to show this. If you could just show, if you could hold. And what was your husband's name?
Benny, his name was Yehuda Dov Bear. Do you imagine what handle that is? Benny, he was Benny.
Wow, I'm going to just bring this a little bit closer. And you were mentioning, I'm just going to lift this up a little. You were mentioning about Bear that the name actually came from Ze'ev.
My father was Ze'ev.
Yeah.
He was, no, my husband was Yehuda Dov Bear.
Yeah.
That was his designated name. I think he was ill when he was a child, and he was given an extra name. I think he had.
But Bear in Hebrew is Ze'ev.
But we knew it.
Yeah.
No, Ze'ev was my father. Ze'ev was my father. Ze'ev didn't come into bed.
It didn't come into.
No.
Wow, it's interesting that.
Yeah.
And when you first met, did you fall in love straight away?
I suppose he must have done.
And how soon afterwards did you get married?
How soon? That was June 1940.
Yeah.
And we were married in September 1940.
So that's very soon.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He was a different country. He was in a different town. He lived in Newcastle. I lived in Ayr at the time. And yeah, you had to do things quickly. You didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow.
And when you got married, did you decide to go to Newcastle?
There was no question about it. He came from Newcastle. I went to live with him. There wasn't a thing about it. It just happened.
And you got on well with his parents, with his family?
I got it. His father had already recently died. And I got involved with it. That's not such a good story.
Okay, you stayed together. But Phyllis, but you stayed in Newcastle.
I stayed in Newcastle. I had my son in Newcastle, and then I had it up to here.
Can I just ask, when you were in Newcastle, you mentioned that that's when you encountered a bit of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
In what way?
Just there was a big rabble. My mother-in-law must have had property in the poor areas, and these people were a rabble. They were really, they used to put tins down the toilet to make the government come and say it's not fit for them to live in, that sort of thing. I'm talking about the 1940s. And what else can I tell you? What did you say?
How did you experience anti-Semitism? Did they know you were Jewish? Or did you ever have any...
Just there somehow.
You could just feel it?
Anti-Semitism active on me came later on when I was already driving, so it wasn't that. I don't know what it was. It was an area that was in near Newcastle, between Gateshead and Newcastle. That was very, I found when we parked the car, my husband didn't have a car, but they had the leavings of a business that they had before the war, and the car belonged to the business. And if you parked a car up to it, I remember an Irishman saying, "You bloody Jews." It was passive, but it was only later it actually became more very, but not like in Germany, it didn't spoil our lives, it didn't affect our lives.
And did you remember the yeshiva, or did you have any contact with the Gateshead yeshiva?
With yeshiva, I only knew of these Frum boys that went to yeshiva. I knew of them because I lived near Gateshead, the next town to Gateshead. And there were always nice people. There wasn't a Mr. Gasselitz there.
Did your husband ever go to the yeshiva?
No. To the yeshiva, no. He did sit in there. He used to have a Sunday, he had a friend who they used to sit and learn a bit with. He wasn't very learned. He liked his religion. I like my religion.
You were very traditional. Very traditional.
Yeah. Yes.
And how long did you live in Gateshead? In Newcastle?
I've got to think now. I was pregnant with my second child. My first child was 11 months old. I was married in 90, so it's been about 90 for maybe 3 years. And now a bit of history, which you don't have to record. I said to my husband, I'm leaving. Very naive, very childish. I was a very young 20, not an intellectual or social person. I said, but I'm leaving. Either we go together back to Glasgow or we go away. But I had had enough of his mother. And we left and we went to live in Torquay.
In Torquay?
Torquay is in Cornwall. And people were evacuated there from London. And we went to live there.
Did you choose to go there because it was safe?
We went together because we wanted to be together.
And that it was safer to go there? Could have been because that's where people were evacuated?
We hoped it would be.
Wow, so you were there during the, with the Blitz, with the...
My daughter was born there, my first daughter.
Gee. And were you happy there?
Yes. Yes.
And what did your husband do? What type of work?
Well, they'd had their own business. To begin with, he was a lot older than me, and he didn't want to go into the army, and he went to the shipyards.
Gee.
And he spent the wartime in the shipyards. And I used to go down to him with his lunch and a package every day from Glasgow, not from Glasgow, from Newcastle to the shipyards.
And when,
Bringing back
it's amazing.
Yes.
And when you left Newcastle and you...
We went to Torquay.
And what, did he work or...
He found a job. He found a travelling job. Gee. I think it was started with kitchen furniture, different things.
And there were many Jews. Many Jews had were evacuated there.
Community.
And what do you remember of the that time during the war? Was there a lot of rationing? Did you have to have food? Did you have to have food coupons? Was food, because this is during the war.
We had ration books. We had ration books, very limited for sweets and chocolate, but butter, bread, and necessary things. I remember standing in a queue waiting for fresh fish and forgetting I had a pram there with a baby in it. Oh, lots of vignette that one could come across. Could go on for hours.
And Phyllis, what did you know anything what was happening in Europe with what the Nazis were doing?
Yes, that is something that has been a bone of contention for me. That we knew and they weren't doing anything.
Did you know?
We all felt, I remember feeling, and I was still young and very naive, not a talker at all, not an observer even, but we all knew that there should have been bombing the
railroads and the camps. Yes. But you knew that there were atrocities, that Jews were being killed.
We didn't know the extent of the problem until the war ended, and we had actually came to live with us, a family who had been in the camps and actually showed us soap made from babies' bodies. Oh, terrible things, all coming back to me. You remember the German, oh, what was her name? It was I can't remember just now. The German woman who was known to take babies and do things, terrible things with them, making use of their bodies and so on at the very beginning. We knew those things, which when I spoke to South Africans later on in life, knew nothing about.
How did you know? Was it from the news, or you heard word of mouth?
It was the news. It was the news on the screen. I think it was a film. I think it was a film news. It's very difficult to go back in that because at the time you don't realise you're thinking of something for posterity.
Yeah.
So things get a little bit mixed up, timing and so on. But we knew a lot of what was going on, and especially by couldn't be before 1945, when people started coming over in dribs and drabs, and we took in a couple with a baby and a sister. And the sister had been in the camps and she was bloated. She'd been made to work and all she lived on was potatoes. And somehow or other they came. That was before the ones who went to Switzerland. That's another story, that's a later story.
And where were you living when they came to your home?
When that happened, we were living in Torquay.
And they came to stay with you?
My husband and I and my two children.
And you invited them to come and stay with you?
We gave our name to take. Wow. I mean, as they do today with the Russians.
You from Ukraine. And can I just ask, did you ever meet any Kindertransport? Any of the children that went on the Kindertransport?
Then I did laterally. In fact, a relation of mine has just died. That's another story. I did. I met people. Gradually, you meet somebody, and then.
But during the war, did you meet or did you know any of the Kindertransport during the war?
In Scotland, we didn't see a lot of it. It was very minimal then. It all happened from Manchester down.
Yeah.
The immigrants, but then there was 10 to different people, and it depends who volunteered to have. I do remember them. I do remember a few, but gradually, as time went on, you met different classes, almost, one can say. Terrible stories. But we were very aware of it, much more aware of it. America did nothing. America knew, but Roosevelt was
He did nothing. It's very true. They just, it's being exposed, and there are many people that still don't believe it.
Yeah. When I read today, I have to do my.
He also, they say with Dunkirk that Roosevelt didn't help with the evacuation of Dunkirk either. Churchill begged him, and he said no.
Me and my family were particularly fortunate. Most of our people were north of the border and didn't get that inflow that came from Europe. They went further south. Apart from anything else, there was more trade there, there was more work there.
And did you still have a lot of family, or your husband's family, that remained in Lithuania or in Europe?
I had some of my, yes, I still, but we didn't really realise it until after the war. No, that's not true. That's not true. I did have the family of that one you're looking at, and I don't know. I can only say that my grandmother came out of Lithuania in 1885, I think. Sure. And that's the one that went to Dundee. The others I can't be specific.
Mm-hmm. And Phyllis, I just want to ask you, because it's amazing what you and your husband did. When you put your names down to accept the refugees, the survivors, not refugees, survivors.
Well,
was it very difficult?
It was difficult, but I don't know.
Can you tell us a little bit about who they were, the survivors who came to stay with you?
We made the best of what we had. I can't think of us as survivors. We followed the rules. We blackened our windows.
No, but when they came, when you were in Torquay, and you accepted the survivors, the family, who came?
We didn't think of ourselves then as survivors.
No, but family that you brought, the family.
There were survivors when coming there. The survivors weren't coming yet.
But when, after the war, when you did take them in.
That was another ball game.
But who, do you remember their names, the people that you...
Some, I kept in touch with some. We helped them. I remember my husband had one particular man who had come out of the camps, the one who I told you came with a belly full of potatoes and survived. They survived. He survived with his sister, and then he met his wife who had also survived. What am I wanting to tell you? What did you ask me?
And how did you communicate with them? How did you...
Well, first of all, my husband communicated with them in a sort of German, and certainly Yiddish, a lot of Yiddish.
Did you know Yiddish as well?
No, only hearing things. I didn't know it as a language, not to speak. And we helped them.
And did
all of us, whoever was there,
would help.
Was a Brit I helped them.
And did they speak about the horrendous things that happened?
Some of them spoke and some of them didn't speak until later. We had this bar of soap, which was a terrible thing. We had a lampshade made from the skin of babies.
Did they bring it with?
Survivors did, yeah. Horrible. Terrible. I can't remember the woman's name. And she's still alive. Well, she was a couple of years ago.
And when you found out the horrendous atrocities that happened, how did you react?
What do you do?
I know, what do you do?
If you can't mend it, what can you do? It's terrible. And I think a lot of people did demonstrate and wanted them to go on. But the thing was, when you started bombing the camps, you were bombing your own people as well.
But looking back, most of the people that I've met, the survivors, they wish they would have bombed. They said if it gave us such hope when we thought they were going to bomb.
What a thing to say, I wish I had.
I know, it's so true.
You can waste your whole life saying, I wish I had done this, that,
it's
or
so
the other.
true, Phyllis. Wow. And Phyllis, can I ask when...
Are you broadcasting me?
No, this is, we just video. But Phyllis, when the partition plan, we're now coming to Israel, and the white paper, were people upset of the British white paper that prevented Jews from entering Israel?
I don't know, but I was blazing. And I still am when I think of it. I remember being in I was with my baby, and I was pregnant, and we were buying groceries in Torquay in a shop, and this lovely young girl says to me, "Oh, you Jews want everything." Wow. And why has she said that? She saw I was Jewish. I don't know, but probably maybe he wouldn't have had a kippah on at that age. I don't remember. And she said, it transpired that her husband or her boyfriend had been a soldier in Palestine and had been killed by the Jews in Akko. There was I remember
when there was the revolt.
There was a revolt there. So, and that's something I remember. But not a lot more after that. Not a lot more. Ask me another question.
And when the partition plan at the United Nations was announced, you must have celebrated.
We just went mad. Everybody made parties and things, and we opened a charity shop to collect things to sell, to send money to. We did lots of it. That was in Torquay still before we went to Bournemouth. Yes, we did. We were quite active in trying to, as much as we could be.
And when the state was declared in 48, when Ben Gurion declared the state, you must have been, that's a momentous...
Yeah, I mean, everybody did the same. Just did. And I remember even in Bournemouth already, I think it must have been the 6-Day War, and we're walking on the seafront as one did in Bournemouth, which is a seaside
Were
resort.
you living in Bournemouth?
I lived in Bournemouth after Torquay because
Oh, you went to
when
Bournemouth?
Torquay became too. I'll tell you what happened. Torquay, my son was beginning to do Hebrew and thinking of a bar mitzvah and so on, and we moved from Torquay to Bournemouth because of a bigger community there. The Torquay community was dwindling because it was a long way away from London. A lot of Persians lived there. The Persians came there, hordes of them. They bought big houses, and they lived 6 families to a house. I know the people today. I know the next generation. Why am I telling you this?
And why you moved to Bournemouth?
Why we moved to Bournemouth? We wanted the Jewish input, and that's why we moved. And we had a lovely life in Bournemouth. We had a house, and we had children and children. They had friends. There was a ladies' guild. There was a wheat sow. There was a mitzrachi. There was. It was a town. It was a Jewish town.
So I have to ask you, did you remember the Green Park Hotel?
It was enormous part of it. Very much so. Very much so.
And the Marriotts?
Have you read this? Have you read the?
I know David. I actually went to see David.
I've got the book. I got a present for my birthday.
But you remember the hotel, and you remember the Marriotts. You remember David and his parents.
First of all, they were very charitable.
Yeah.
Sarah Marriott, David's mother, didn't drive, and I did by then, so I used to pick her up.
Wow.
They gave their hotel for dinners, for meetings, for supports. They were very charitable. They may not have actually given money, but they gave the facilities. Oh,
Which was worth everything.
I'm still in touch with them. We were it was very good.
And did you used to attend some of the functions? Some on Pesach or any of the holidays?
Well, I'll tell you. I told you I had an uncle, and I had an aunt, his sister, who had a not good marriage. So they actually used to travel more or less like a couple, because my uncle never married, and they used to come down to the Green Park regularly. Wow. For Pesach a few times, and also if he was on business somewhere, he would take the weekend off and go to. My uncle would never open a letter on Shabbos, never, even if it was very important. If it was anything to do with business, he didn't touch on Shabbos. But he never married, and he never had any children.
And you lived in Bournemouth for many years?
We lived in Bournemouth, I can't tell you exactly, but between 25 and 30, probably about 27 years. And then my children rebelled. They wanted to live in a town where there was a lot of Jews. And they gradually moved up to London. And I stayed in Bournemouth with my baby. And I was very happy in Bournemouth. Had a very nice life. Nice social life, a nice Jewish life. We had an old man living there that lived to 113.
Wow. And today the community, it's dwindled.
It's different. Everything's different. Yeah. How different.
But I think it's decreased quite drastically.
I'm still in touch with Bournemouth.
And there's still the yeah.
My husband's busy there.
And when did you decide to come to Israel?
My husband and I thought about it about 30 years ago. My baby was coming up to 12 years old, and we decided we wanted to come. But the problem with schooling at that age was going to be very difficult, and we dropped it. I even had a case pack with anti-germs and coffee and tea and so on, and we went back to our life in Bournemouth. And then the children grew up, My son made Aliyah. My daughter married an Israeli.
Gee.
We had to go for the wedding, and we went to Israel. We came here on our 25th wedding anniversary, 1965, and we came with a week to group and loved it. And it was always an issue, a thought, and I made it myself. I did it myself on my own, straight from London to here.
How many years ago?
12.
Wow. And you're happy that you came?
I wouldn't have been alive otherwise.
What do you say?
I wouldn't have been me.
Really, Phyllis? Wow.
Because I'd have been in an old age home. This is not a home, this is a retirement village. And I won't let anyone to call it anything else.
It's a beautiful, you're in the country, it's magnificent.
People here still working, the flowers, the gardens, the tree. I sit out, I usually eat my breakfast and my lunch out there. I love it.
And
But I found it myself, and that's what I love about it. Nobody said you should come and see this.
You found
I
it
was
yourself?
80 years old when I first came to saw this.
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted to end my days here. By that time, my baby had made Aliyah with her four children, and then she had twins here. That's another little vignette.
And Phyllis, did you know that there were many South Africans in
Did I know?
that there were many South Africans in Protea?
Yes. Well, I didn't know about. Well, I knew that Protea was a flower, and I knew that South Africans had taken over Renana. In any case, 20, I don't know how many years ago, everybody knew that South Africans were Renana.
And you get on very well.
I didn't come for that reason, I can assure. In fact, when I first made inquiries, Protea
There's one in Herzliya.
the first Protea,
In Herzliya.
in Herzliya.
Bay Protea.
When the first time I heard of it was Protea was in Herzliya, and they only took South Africans. It was only South African money. I said, thank you, goodbye, Dolly. Then I came to visit somebody here, they just opened. And I thought, if ever I'm in a position, this is where I want to be. And I followed it, and in 81, I put a deposit down, which they said would be returnable. And I came for my 90th birthday.
That's wonderful.
And had it here.
Sure.
That is one family. That is my son's family. 2 years ago.
And this
That
picture,
is also my son's family. But that's also got others on it.
so I'm going to just show, if you don't mind, if I can show the pictures.
Be my guest.
It's wonderful. And it's growing.
That's a year old.
It's so beautiful.
That is my two granddaughters, two sisters, both in Israel, both with children.
And that is your...
And my
It's
grandchildren.
beautiful. It's so beautiful. What a beautiful
And
picture.
their mother and father have just made Aliyah last week.
Last week. Wow. And here's another picture of...
That is last Pesach.
Wow.
We had a get-together. I think there's 170 on there.
And where was the get-together?
Where was the get-together? That's another story.
This is such a beautiful picture. This is how long ago was this picture made? It's magnificent.
3 children now. 7 years.
And the picture behind us?
Oh, that's an old story. That's my son.
That's your son.
That has been painted by a person who's never had a paintbrush in his hand.
Oh, you're being serious?
And it was taken from a picture.
Wow.
And he gave it to my daughter-in-law, to his wife. And my daughter said, I'm not... my daughter-in-law's brother did this. He retired from Israeli aircraft, and his first thing he did was painted this picture. Never had a paintbrush in his life. and he gave it to my daughter, who was his wife. And my daughter-in-law said, I'm not keeping this, I'm taking this, I'm giving it to Safta, and then it'll be mine, it'll be hers. So I've got this as long as I'm
beautiful.
alive.
And Phyllis, can I ask, the pictures at the very top,
That's my two brothers and my husband. That's all my men.
and this is so nice, from Emunah, for the children of Israel, in celebration and recognition of your years of tireless devotion and hard work, with love from many friends of Emunah in 2010. You were involved in Emunah.
I'm proud of those. You know why? I'm in the Emunah diary. My name is in the Emunah diary as a vice president. They give. Now people get that from giving money. I never had money.
But you gave of yourself.
And I appreciate it.
That's beautiful.
I've got quite a number of things. Because that's what I did.
So, Phyllis, I have to ask you, you've lived such a momentous life, such an incredible life.
I think it's not.
And Bezrat Hashem, at Mevestream Plus, till 120 and more, in good health and happiness and smiling.
Que sera, sera.
What message do you impart to your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
I keep on saying, first of all, the first thing I say, obviously because I'm the matriarch, I'm the only one that gets an extra speech. But I love talking. I don't like speaking, but I love talking. You've got to make the best of everything you've got. If something has gone wrong, like a loss, like losing this was
Your son,
blow,
for sure.
you can't sit and mourn all your life. You hurt your children, you hurt your friends, you hurt the family. You've got to make the best of the situation you're in. You've got to use it for good, not for bad. Look at the upstairs flight, not the downstairs flight. Look through the window, not at the window.
Wow, that is such beautiful
Look what's
advice.
behind you. And make the best of what you have. I'm liked here. Do you know why I'm liked here? Because I'm always smiling. I
You
get
really
into the
are.
lift and say, good morning, oh, kapokato. I don't speak a word of Hebrew, by the way. Not a word.
But you get by, you get by.
I get by. I get by. I can't think of anything else to say.
But you know, I think you inherited from your mother when she lost your father at such a young age, and she kept on and she raised such a beautiful family.
She raised a beautiful family. She had a beautiful marriage, I must tell you. It was I don't remember, but my younger sister tells me, like the sister was next to me, always talks about what they were like before. And yes, she was a great lady. She was a great lady. But I think they were all good. I'm thinking of her sisters. They all did their bit, their share. I mean, I can remember a social life which always involved an organisation of some kind.
Always giving to the community.
Yes.
Always.
We saw show business, Jewish care became Jewish care. The Jewish Board of Guardians of Glasgow became Jewish care in London eventually. I think people were like that. The haves were always cognizant of the have-nots. I think it was a way of life, a good way of life.
It's beautiful. It's Phyllis, I just want to thank you. I am, you know, Phyllis. First of all,
Careful.
I am so grateful to you, Phyllis. You know, there are no words, really. You are such an inspiration.
Thank you.
You are amazing.
You've been better than the doctor for me, because you give me inspiration. You're giving me a satisfaction that what I did must have been right.
It was not only right, you are, what you did and how you raised such a beautiful family, and you're seeing the fruits of your family, and you smile, and you, because you also didn't have such an easy life. And look, you are so, we can learn so much from you for this.
You wouldn't even think that things could happen to people, not just me. Everybody you see, you have no idea what's gone on before.
That's true.
Because a real person doesn't show it.
Sure, it's so true.
I'll tell you a little vignette. There's a lady here from Australia whose father was Israeli, but they were starving in Palestine, and went to Australia and lived in a corner somewhere where there are no Jews. But she was still brought up. Her father insisted, "You're Jewish, don't forget," and taught her certain things. What am I telling you that for?
Just from Australia, and she lives here.
Right. Why did I...
Maybe she's a very inspirational person, or she's a good friend of yours.
What was the last thing you said to me?
Just that you inspire so many people, and you said this is a vignette of somebody you know from Australia.
Okay, so we used to...
That had a hard life, that had a very hard life.
We met one another because our children had arrived here at the same time, 1989. So we met that way before I came to live here, and then I came here. And then I persuaded her son to tell her to come here. She lives across the road there.
And you best of friends?
And we became like sisters. Now, again I've lost the track.
That she had a hard life. They had nothing to eat, and they had to leave because they had nothing to eat.
And they had to leave. But that's not why I'm telling you that. Go on, let's talk about something else for a minute.
But you're close with each other, and you...
Very close. I'm very close to the whole family. Been to all the weddings.
Gee.
And very close. I wanted to make a special point of something. Go on talking.
So they went to Australia, and what made her decide to come back to Israel?
Her son had come here, and he does a lot of work for the Hebrew University. They had money, they were comfortable, and she's very happy to be here. And her son rang me up one day and said, "Phyllis," he said, "she's made it, she's coming."
Oh, wonderful.
And because of me, and she lives here. She's still alive, but she's not as talkative as I am.
And Phyllis, you're still in touch with all your friends?
Yeah.
It's amazing. You've kept the connection with everyone.
As much as I can. It's very difficult when you move cities to live. You know, my children haven't grown up with their school friends because we've moved down, which makes a big difference. But they've all got loads of friends.
So I have a question to ask. With all Canon Horror, all the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, how do you get to all the simchas? How do you manage to...
Well, it's wonderful. And you know what? He's always there.
Yeah.
The children have kept him in their lives completely. And a little picture, all the pictures there with me are all his would have been his grandchildren. They all sing his songs.
Oh, it's wonderful.
They do their Friday nights his way, everything. So, I know what I was going to tell you with my Australian lady, Seema. So we used to have lunch together downstairs in the dining room. And then one lady would come, "Can we join your table?" I said, "Yes, with pleasure." We would say, "Can we join your table?" I said, "Yes." So from big two we would be around sitting. And then they start talking. I said, "Just a minute." I said, "If you're talking about your teeth, and you're talking about your hearing aids, and you're talking about your doctor, and you're talking about your bodily function, you can leave the table now,
Wow.
or I will. And I just wouldn't allow people talking about their own illnesses. And I have a problem with some, because they dwell on what is the downside, that little bit of down, and they take away from the good, because that little bit of down comes into it. There's one lady I play rummy cards. That's the only thing I do, I play rummy cards. It is a stimulus that makes you on the ball. And every time she puts down a brick, you know I can't see very well. I said, don't think about what you're saying. Think about the brick you're putting down to try and catch somebody out on the other side. She can. She said, but you don't know what it is, Phyllis. I said, I do know what it is. But don't think about it all.
Wow, what wonderful.
Speak on to something else, something good. Well, I've got one daughter who's always complaining about people. And I say, think of the good things. Things are going upstairs instead of downstairs. Why can't phone up and tell me what they did? Phone up and say where they went.
If only we could all have followed this advice, but it's so true. But listen, I just want to mention, I know a kindertransport, somebody who had a very hard life. She left her parents, were killed, she never saw her parents again.
Yeah,
And she had it very hard
well, I'll tell
being
you a story.
in kindertransport.
Just so happens.
So I'll just
Go on, finish.
So what happened is, when I went to see her, she's my patient as well, she said, you know, I only want to dwell on the positive. I was saved, I'm alive, and I made it my mission in life not to think of the negative, because there was a lot of negative, but I just want to dwell on the positive, not on the negative. Oh, you said, if you could tell us your
But
story.
it's easier for me to say that than her, because she went through it.
Sure.
Now I've forgotten the vignette.
Oh yeah, this is so important. Yes.
What did you say to start with? Oh, we were talking about kindertransport.
I'm going to just bring this
There's
around.
a picture there. There's a picture there of a couple coming out of Buckingham Palace with an award. Can you?
Oh yes, it's over.
Yes, exactly. That's him. Her mother was my first cousin. And she's a lot younger than him. He died yesterday.
He died yesterday.
He died yesterday.
What was his name?
His name was Eric Reich.
I heard it was in the...
Right. Yes, he'd done a lot. He'd done a lot. It was his suitcase that was in the station in London, Victoria Station. His suitcase. Now, I'll tell you the story. His parents had 3 boys, and they took those 3 boys to the kindertransport and put them on the train, and that was it. And the parents went away. The 3 boys were something like 8 and 10 or 7, and a baby of maybe a year and a half. When they came to the UK, nobody would take the baby. But people took the boys, the big boys. And he was taken by lovely English, I think there was a bit of Jewish country farmers, agricultural, and they took him and they brought him up beautifully. And 8 or 9 years later, the big boys started looking for their little brother. And he came one day and said, I'm looking for a boy called such and such and so on. Well, I'm his little boy on a bicycle. I'm Eric. And that was the 3 together. And he grew up and he married, he came in, he started business, and he met my cousin a few years ago, and a late marriage. I mean, they wouldn't have children, they were older. And yesterday morning she found him on the couch.
Yesterday morning?
God, yesterday morning.
Sure, and this is the picture. Wow. And you were in touch. You had a close connection.
Oh, very close connection. They never came to visit without coming to visit me. Take a taxi from Tel Aviv and they'd come in and spend a day with me. No question. She and her sister. Her father was her father won scholarship to study medicine in Sweden before the war.
Amazing.
That's a story.
Phyllis, this is incredible. We could spend... Phyllis, you are such an inspiration to all of us. You are, in all the pictures, you're always smiling. Phyllis, it's incredible. You're always smiling and you're so joyful. And
all the little boys, you see the little boys,
Yeah.
as soon as they come in, they're all at weddings, each at different weddings, siblings' weddings, and they come, and a big cuddle, and then they run away and play, and I love it. And this little one here with me, he chose the picture and he chose the frame.
Is this...
No, that's another one, it's a bigger one.
Yes, I'm just going to go through some of these pictures because it's so beautiful. Phyllis, your home is so warm and so lovely, and it's...
Tons of them.
Dear Safta Rabba.
I've got pictures going back to
Maybe this is the one.
Right.
What a lovely thing. Dear,
there you are.
dear Safta Rabba,
Lovely,
thank you for being part of my journey. Oh, it's beautiful. Sure.
I don't give them presents. I can't. Where do you start?
Yeah.
Where do you stop? I haven't got the money, and I wouldn't have been able to. But they all come in loving me.
You give them the love, which is priceless.
Give them the love.
That is priceless. Phyllis, thank you so much.
Thank you for bothering
I'm so
me.
not bothering. It's been the greatest honor and privilege. It really has. And you should just have mazel and bracha and continue.
When I tell somebody my age, I love to tell them, because I love to see their mouths open and their eyes will say it.
You should just continue smiling and being happy and in good health, and just mazel and bracha from your beautiful family.
A waste of time.
Thank you so much. Oh, Phyllis, it's been the greatest honor and privilege, really.
Thank you.
Phyllis, you have a very special picture and a special story, another amazing story about your family.
This is my son Walter, my younger son. He lives in New York, in the Far Towns. This lady is married to this. This is my second cousin. His mother, is my second cousin. His grandfather was one of 10 children that belonged to the old them. And they were in Mexico because they couldn't get into America.
And the lady in the blue dress, she was...
The lady in the blue dress.
She's a
the
survivor.
Younger generation. She died about 2 months ago.
And what happened to her during the war?
They were in hiding in somebody's house like Anne Frank.
Where? In Lithuania?
In Lithuania, yes. And they survived the war. Husband and wife and 2 children. Wow. Nobody left now. Well, I think he has a sister.
And you went to Mexico to meet?
I went to Mexico and I met them. And this one here was my first cousin. The youngest of that family. The youngest of that woman's family. The 10 children.
And Phyllis, how did you find them in Mexico? How did you track them down?
We had a sort of a contact over the years. In the early days, in the 30s and 40s, my uncle's office used to be geared for sending stuff over to Russia, to people who were in ghettos and so on, before the war, before the Second World War. And so there was a set of contact. because it was only my father and his two brothers that had actually come to Europe, come to the UK.
And it must have been so emotional when you met
Well,
them.
I just love family and I wanted to tell you several things. You asked me where that was taken. My grandson-in-law is the rabbi of the community of Kfar Haroeh.
Really? Wow.
Not the shul, the community.
The community.
And they allowed us to use a hall there for our families get together. Don't worry about that. I realign them sometimes. And my son was here from America with his wife and Georgia. It was Pesach, last Pesach.
So this picture is in Kfar Haroeh.
They're all mine.
Wow. And this picture is in Kfar Haroeh.
Yes.
Wow, this is really, really wonderful. Phyllis, thank you so much.
And the next day, the next week, I was at another activity in Kfar Haroeh where a couple who had survived the camps but lost their two children had been killed, but they survived. They came to Kfar Haroeh after the camps and they left their home as a Jewish library in Kfar Haroeh and their house as a museum. And the our chief rabbi, the one that was in the camps,
Rabbi Lau.
wow, he came because he had been in the camps with the father. So we were there that day. We were all together. So we made it. We extended that. Chief Mikawa.
There's a Holocaust museum, Shem Olam.
A little one.
Shem Olam, and that's in Kfar Haroeh, and it's Rabbi Krieger.
Yeah.
He heads the Holocaust Museum. Yeah. What a small world. Phyllis, it's incredible. Sure. You've been a witness to our history. I mean, you've lived through our history. You are our history.
But I talk a lot, but I don't always say the right thing properly.
No, you say it comes from the heart, and it's just incredible.
It does.
And Phyllis,
It
thank
does.
you so much.
I don't know why, and I've got to ask. I don't know why, but I always seem to want to do the right thing. But I started having trouble with my teeth. This is a plate I've had for 40 years, and I can't wear the bottom plate. I've got nothing there left. But I still had a few stubs. Now, I asked a very nice dentist how much it's going to cost me to have done what I needed doing at the bottom. And he told me. I said, you know what? I'm 98. I'm not going to spend that money now. I'll be gone soon anyway.
Oei, gas vergullen
I haven't a tooth left.
No, but you're eating okay and you're functioning
I'm very
okay.
good the way I talk. My children didn't know.
Wow.
My children didn't know until a few months ago when I wasn't well that was the case.
That is amazing. Oei, so you should just have...
And I'm okay tonight, thanks.
Unless it's lovely. Sure.